What a day. Lean over to somebody and tell them, I don't mind being here. We come to honor one who has meant so much to all of us. We have listened and we have heard, and we have been blessed by many who've come to speak about the Congressman. There's a word that I want to share. My role is slightly different. My role is slightly different from all of those who've had the privilege to speak. I've come with a different task. Elijah was my friend for almost 40 years. He sat right over there. For a while, he sat right over there. At the other church, he sat on the second or third row. At our other church, right up front. Elijah was here every 7:15 service. On one occasion, he and Maya brought friends to a later service, a service they did not normally frequent, and found that that service was altogether different from the one to which they were accustomed. But he and she in church every Sunday morning. Elijah's last act, official act, congressional act in a sense, was to sign some subpoenas. I saw him that morning. I did not know he was still working, but he was working. But that was not his last official act for God. His last official act for God, and let me preface it by saying this. So many times preachers will talk about speaking truth to power. It is a common statement known by many. We speak truth to power. The real problem is power is not often there. But Elijah's last official act for the kingdom of God was to bring power to church. I didn't get a big amen on that. But his last real act did not take place last Wednesday in the hospital with pen in hand and paper before him. His last act took place or takes place today when men and women from every aspect of life, from those who run corporations, those who stand in Hollywood halls, those who sit with robes behind benches, those who pass legislation in cities, counties, states, and government, have all made their way to the place that he came every Sunday morning, because his last act, I believe, Maya, I believe this with all of my heart, is that he wanted you to know why he came to church. Somebody better hear me today. Elijah wanted us to know why he came to church. There's a word in Psalm 73, verse 15. If I had not spoken out like that, I would have betrayed your children. When I tried to understand all this, it troubled me deeply till I entered into the sanctuary of God. Then I understood. For 37 years he sat in this church, but all his life he was a servant of Almighty God. Oh, yes. We would talk on the regular, week after week. We met, about 1982. Perrin Mitchell was then the 7th Congressional District Congressman and was having a banquet downtown. And I had accepted a responsibility I never would normally expect, to do both the invocation and benediction. I planned to do the invocation because I was going to sneak out. But I had made the commitment to do both. And so that meant I had to stay. And I was seated beside this young lawyer. And I sat with him and we talked the whole while. The speaker was bad and boring. So we chatted all the way through it. I found out that he was from South Baltimore like I was. He was right over the Hanover Street Bridge. I was on the other side, the Ponderosa, the garden spot of American living, where the elite come to meet, Cherry Hill. And he was from South Baltimore proper. And so we talked about that. Then we changed the conversation after we realized we had that in common and traveled on to where we went to school, because in Maryland, in Baltimore, where you went to high school is critical. He informed me that he had gone to this castle on the hill, this place with a black knight, commonly called City College. And I informed him that I had gone to the only high school in this city, the Baltimore Polytechnic Institute. And we laughed over the salad as we talked about that. We found out we had so much in common, and we became friends. And little by little, I saw him coming into the church, and then he joined, his partner joined, family joined. And Elijah became a permanent fixture here. For a time, our legal counsel, always my counselor. And we became fast friends. And every Sunday morning, Elijah Cummings is in church. And God is moving him higher and higher and higher. Don't tell me serving God won't lift you up. Don't tell me the steps of a good man are not ordered by the Lord. God raised him one step after another. His law, Elijah, Phi Beta Kappa from Howard University, graduating the University of Maryland Law. Elijah could have been in any 500 company. He could have been a major lawyer downtown with any of the major law firms. But instead, he decided to open his practice to help people who could not find help for themselves. A smart, brilliant attorney running a shop and God is elevating him with no political machine behind him whatsoever. None. Elijah, from the time that he ran for his first office till the time that he ran for his last seat in Congress, Elijah Eugene Cummings never had a political machine behind him. Never. He had no clubs. Elijah just had people. He had people from here and there and everywhere who would come out and support him. God raising him up every Sunday in church. God raising him up higher and higher. He runs for state delegate, wins that seat. People like Lena K. Lee, Verda Welcome, and others who in their heyday and Juanita Mitchell and Perrin Mitchell had planted a seed in him, and it had begun to grow, and he wanted to step into public office. And so he climbs in, but God is still lifting him. And in 1996, God puts him in Congress. And as the president said, he hadn't been there 15 minutes when he invited William Jefferson Clinton, president of these United States, to come to his home church and worship. For every year he was in Congress, family. For every year he was in the State House. For every year he was a lawyer. He was in church. And the question comes on the last thing that he can do. because the request came to have his service at the Basilica, to have his service downtown, to have his service in the various other large places in town. But the decision was made by his wife that his service would be one place, the New Psalmist Baptist Church. And he was bringing power to church. Somebody better hear what I'm saying. Elijah has brought power to church. Buses rolling up here. Somebody better hear me. I mean, buses coming from everywhere. We got police. I mean, the only thing we don't have is a couple in the ceiling. They're everywhere. We've got security. We've got Secret Service and public service. We've got everything everywhere. They've all come to church. We had folk calling up, I want 20 seats. I want 5 seats. And you know what we did? We said, we'll get you every seat you want, because Elijah wants you in church on the day he goes home. Somebody said, who are you inviting? We inviting everybody. As Larry Young used to say, lottie dottie and everybody. Somebody said, you got too many VIPs. I told the team, everybody is a VIP. Bring everybody, treat them like a VIP. Our fraternity is here. The sororities are here. Morgan is here. You name it. Every place of power, Elijah has called them in. Why did Elijah think you ought to be in church? Why did Elijah think you ought to be in church? Help me, somebody. Not somebody say, uh-oh. I tell you why Elijah wanted you in church, because he found something in church. God, I feel like preaching right now. Walt, I feel like doing a dance for my friend Elijah. Elijah wanted you in church because he wanted you to know what he found in church. Elijah found in God's house and with God that God will help you recognize your own frailties, but cling to your own possibilities. That's what Elijah came to church for. Elijah would be the first one to tell you he wasn't perfect. He'd be the first one to tell you that he struggled and wrestled like everybody else, that he had to climb the rough side of the mountain. You don't come to church to know the obvious. You come to church to find out, is there a way to still be somebody when I've got baggage hanging on me? Is there a way to do something when my life is so messed up? I wish some of us in this room could quit acting as if our lives were all tied together with a nice bow on top. Some of y'all are wondering how you gonna make it and how you gonna get through and how you gonna climb the mountains. Elijah said, I come to church because in church he looks beyond my faults and God sees my needs. God looks at past my shortcomings. Nudge somebody and tell them, I don't always do right. Some of us, and listen, I know some of y'all didn't nudge nobody. Nudge them and say, stop lying, and nudge somebody. You know you have problems like everybody else. Elijah said, I come to church because in church I can recognize my failures and I can claim my possibilities, so that when I leave church, I can go out of here and tell somebody else it is no secret what God can do in your life, what he's done for others. He will surely do. That's why I want you here. You only see people's frailties. You don't see their possibilities. That's why I want you here. You only see how they messed up. I want you to see what they can become. God, I wish I had some folk here who could remember that, because some of us didn't always come from living high on the hog. Some of us came from no meal, miss meal, and skip meal. Some of us came from mama doing your hair in the kitchen. Some of us came from walking to school. Help us, God. Some of us came from those brown bags you cut up and put over your books and call them book covers. Some of us came from starting our first business in a basement. Somebody better hear me. God will show you all things are possible if you believe. I'm not going to be long. That's why he wanted you here. He wanted you to come with your brokenness and understand that every week he brought his brokenness and God gave him and showed him his possibilities. I remember when he ran for office for Congress for the first time. No machine. People he thought would be with him weren't. Hello. Wait a minute. Come on now. Folk he thought had his back, left his back. Others put a dagger in his back. And folk were saying he ain't gonna win. He doesn't have a chance. I remember talking on the phone with him, and I could hear him crying on the other end. Hear him crying. I said, Elijah, you gonna win this. He said, Doc, how do you know? I said, my daddy said so. And on that night he won. Political heads were turned. I got in my car, rode down there as a proud pastor of Elijah, Eugene Cummings, said, look at God. Take you from South Baltimore and put you in Congress. Don't you tell me what God can't do. Right, that's the first thing. You know why he wanted you to come to church? He wanted you to come to church because he knew, and he came to church because all of us, especially those in this room, need a regrounding of your grounding. Need a regrounding of your grounding. Some of us have forgotten what we were brought up on. We've forgotten it. When somebody died in my neighborhood, you had a grief buffet. Somebody came in with a ham. Somebody brought greens. And somebody brought a pie. Somebody was around the neighborhood collecting money. Child, I remember when there were only a few cars in the neighborhood. And so everybody would pile into a car like a national almanac, trying to set a new record, going to the beach. I remember when we had barbecues in the backyard and when a sprinkler was your swimming pool. But we grew up with integrity. We grew up caring for each other. We grew up with a sense of selflessness. Help me, somebody. Elijah came to church every week because he knew how easy it is to forget where you've come from. As a friend of mine once said, a person was speaking, trying to let people know how impressive they were. And they were telling them that the church was having a dinner after church, and they were having chitterlings and collards. Somebody said, what's that? Chitlins and collards. But sometimes we have forgotten where we've come from. And sometimes we have to make sure our nation does not forget the very things that have been planted in our spirit. Elijah brought you to church today so that that moral compass can be reset, so your grounding can get back, so that we can remember we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, of which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He brought you to church to be regrounded. Because we can forget it. We can get so caught up in the new place where we are that we forget the old place that brought us there. My God, some of us grew up on Amazing Grace. Some of us grew up on The Lord Is My Light. And we've forgotten that in the end, we will not stand before presidents or kings. We will stand before He who is the judge of the ages. And when I see Him, I want to stand shoulder to shoulder with all of those who have stood before me and not be ashamed, because I'm grounded in where I came from. Mama and Daddy were preachers. They were Pentecostal preachers. Y'all missed that. No, don't you equate everything alike. Oh, no. In a Pentecostal home, you're going to learn how to pray. Am I right, brothers and sisters? And in a Pentecostal home, you go into church, or somebody going to plead the blood on you. They're going to pour oil on you. And I promise you, they're going to cast out a devil. Yes, they are. Am I right? Am I right? Elijah could never wanted to forget that. He didn't want to be driven around and forget when he had to scrape money together to make payroll. Somebody better hear me in here. He didn't want to be flashy and forget what it was like to have folks say, I'll pay you later, Mr. Cummings. And be able to live with that and accept it. He never wanted to lose what was grounded in him. And I think he brought you to church because too many in our country are forgetting where they came from and what was instilled in them. We were not taught to be divided. Mama would backslap you if you talked out a turn. Somebody in here, remember this line? I didn't beat you for what you did. I beat you for how you said it. Help me, somebody. Elijah said, I never want to lose that ability to talk to folk and to get along with folk. We may disagree on the issue, but you are still a person and I'm still a person, and we're still trying to get somewhere. My mama taught me that. My mama taught me I'm not worse than anybody, but she also taught me I'm not better than anybody. And she taught me that the God I serve will make a way for everybody. She taught me how to take care of the least, the left out, the lonely, those that can't lift themselves. Do you know why Elijah was so articulate? He never forgot his grounding. I heard people mentioning that Elijah was a prophet, or rather was like the prophet Elijah. Nudge somebody and say, get this. They're talking about Elijah the prophet, but Elijah was a prophet. A prophet, according to Walter Brueggemann, an Old Testament scholar, says a prophet does three things. A prophet critiques the dominant ideology. A prophet articulates the public pain, and the prophet offers up creative solutions for those who cannot find their way. I've got news for you. Because he stayed grounded in who he was, Elijah would always critique the dominant ideology. He didn't care whether you liked it or not. His voice would rise, his lip would quiver. He'd say, come on now, we can do better than this. He look at you and their hand sometimes starts shaking. You see that knot on the other side of his hand just moving. Why? Because Elijah critiqued what was not right in America. But not only did he critique, he spoke for folk who had no voice. Why? Because he grew up having no voice. He grew up in a community, in a world where we were not allowed to do what we can now do. And Elijah said, as God gives me breath, I will speak for folk who can't speak. I will articulate for folk who cannot articulate. I need you to grab somebody and tell them, don't forget where you came from. But there's a last reason. He came to church. He came to church, and then I'm done, and then we take him to his final rest. Elijah, I hope I'm telling them why you came to church. There's a last reason he came to church. On Monday to Friday, he's known as the Honorable Congressman Elijah Cummings. Most of you in Washington and in other places know him as the Congressman Elijah Cummings. If you travel the city of Baltimore, in the streets of Baltimore, and someone meets him, rarely will they say Elijah. Rarely. There's too much venerated respect for this man who lives in the heart of the city. Too much respect. And they'll say, Mr. Cummings. You go around town in Baltimore, Mr. Cummings. People on the street, Mr. Cummings, because he's spoken of with great reverence. In New Psalmist, he's Brother Elijah Cummings. And let me share this with you. Monday to Friday, he's solving the problems of the world. In the streets and neighborhoods, he's trying to show possibilities. But when he comes here on Sunday, no fanfare, no entourage, no nothing. He and Maya just come marching right on down that little side, sit right on down. Nope. No smile for the camera, just come in and take their seat. Among everybody else in the house, because he comes here for the same reason they do. To get the strength to go back to the assignment that God has given him to do. Some of you are weary in well-doing. Some of you are weary because of all that you have to face in these turbulent times. Some of you are worried and feeling fearful about the state of the union and how things are going to happen. But week after week, Elijah Cummings came to church so that that kind of pessimism could never take rootage in his soul. So that that kind of hopelessness and despair could never be the tenor of his conversation. He came every week because God was telling him, I'll give you the strength to go back and make a difference one more week. All I need you to do is have faith and believe that I will make a way somehow. You all, as Maya said, you don't know how sick he's been over these years. There were times I didn't expect to see him coming to church. And Maya would say, oh, he's coming today. And he would roll right on in because Elijah would say, as long as God gives me strength, I'm going to be able to go back and fight another day. Never fighting with despair, never fighting with pessimism, fighting with the one weapon Jesus Christ made sure he had. And that weapon was an unshakable faith, a faith that God did not bring me this far to leave me now. Oh, touch somebody and say, hear this, that God didn't bring our nation this far to leave us now. And if God be for us, y'all ain't hearing what I'm saying. If God be for us, he is more than the world against us. So I can rise up and go back to the challenge. I can go back to my district. I can go back to my committee because the strong hand of the Lord is on me. His wish for you is that you will have a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe. I'm done now. Sleep on, Elijah. Where are you, Elijah? I'm in glory land. It took me a while to get here, but I can stand before my God and I can hear him say, well done. And may the work I've done, may the work I've done, may the work I've done speak for me. us all to stand. Well, buddy, it's the last moments. I need you to hold somebody's hand. This service is nearing its final moments. But this is his gift. This is his gift to you. This is why he wanted you to come to church. Some folk didn't get here today. Some folk didn't make it. Some folks said, nah, but you came. You came. Don't ever forget. And maintain your faith in the rightfulness of God sitting on